So picture this. It's late 2025, and you are just scrolling through social media.
Like we all do, just staring at the feed.
Exactly, just doing the usual doom scroll. And you stumble across this new advertisement from McDonald's.
Oh, I remember this one.
Yeah, it was called It's the Most Terrible Time of the Year, which, first of all, is a wild title for a burger commercial.
Definitely an edgy marketing choice.
Right. But the thing is, it wasn't a normal commercial. It was completely 100% generated by AI.
And it showed. I mean, it really showed.
It really did. It featured these incredibly unnerving synthetic people eating burgers, but the geometry was all wrong.
Yeah, people with like 7 fingers and jaws that unhinged in ways that defy basic physics.
Exactly. Expressions that just did not map onto a human face correctly. It was visceral. It wasn't meant to be a horror film, but people were genuinely repulsed by it.
The uncanny valley effect was just off the charts.
But, okay, let's unpack this. Because here's the truly bizarre part. If you scroll down to the YouTube comments on that video, before they disabled them, you didn't see a bunch of humans saying, wow, this is creepy.
Right, the outrage wasn't there. Well, human outrage anyway.
Yeah. Instead, the top comments were thousands of identical, slightly garbled praises. Stuff like, great burger time for family. Or literally just the word amen.
Just thousands of automated amens on a terrifying burger commercial.
Thousands. And in that specific moment, a massive, highly paranoid theory that used to live exclusively in the darkest, weirdest corners of the web suddenly looked mathematically, terrifyingly true.
It stopped being a joke right then and there.
It really did. So welcome to another deep dive. Today we are attempting to answer a question that changes the fundamental nature of the spaces where you spend your digital life.
The question of, are you actually talking to anybody out there?
Exactly, because it is the defining technological paradox of our era, I think. We're hyper-connected to a network that has literally never been more active, but the actual density of human presence seems to be collapsing.
Yeah, it's this incredibly loud, bustling city, but when you look closely, the streets are empty.
So today, we are going to look at the exact mechanics of how this happened. We're looking at a huge collection of source material, mostly tracing excerpts and historical archives on the Wikipedia page for the dead internet theory.
Right, and we're going to shift away from just internet folklore into cold, hard data.
That's our mission, to trace how a paranoid image board conspiracy morphed into a highly plausible, observable reality. We're breaking down network traffic, algorithm shifts, the bizarre rise of synthetic slop, and the psychological toll this takes on you.
Because it does take a toll when you realize the person you're arguing with online doesn't exist.
It really does.
Yeah.
So let's look at the anatomy of this digital ghost story. Where did the idea that the internet actually died come from? Because it certainly didn't start in an Ivy League computer science department.
No, far from it. The origins are pretty muddy, which makes sense because online subcultures are kind of designed to disappear.
Right, they're ephemeral.
Exactly. But researchers tracing the disinformation point back to places like WizardChan, which is this incredibly niche, obscure image board.
But the real flashpoint, like the moment it actually crystallized into a cohesive narrative, was in 2021, right?
Yeah. There was a user posting under the name Illuminate Pirate, and they published this massive thread on a forum called Agora Roads Macintosh Cafe.
I love these old internet forum names.
They're great, but the post was titled, very bluntly, Dead Internet Theory. Most of the internet is fake.
And we have to be clear, when we say conspiracy theory here, we are talking about a sprawling, intense manifesto. Illuminate Pirate wasn't just saying, hey, I get a lot of spam email.
No, they were claiming that the internet, you and I remember, like the messy, human-curated web of the early 2000s, literally died around 2016.
Died, just ceased to exist. And that everything since then has been a completely manufactured illusion.
Right. And as that post migrated off Agora Road and exploded across Reddit and YouTube, sociologists actually started to categorize it.
Yeah, our sources break it down into these evolutionary stages. There's the strong version, the weak version, and then a newer one.
Let's start with the strong version, because that one is basically science fiction.
It really is. The strong version is the idea that human society has already suffered some catastrophic collapse.
And that an incredibly advanced entity, some proponents literally think it's an artificial superintelligence or even aliens, is keeping humanity plugged into a fake internet.
Like a digital pacifier, just to hide the reality of our destruction. It's literally the plot of The Matrix.
It is the ultimate extension of simulation theory. But then You step down to the weak version.
Right, which removes the aliens, but it keeps the malice.
Exactly. The weak version suggests that a cabal of global elites or coordinated state actors are using unfathomably large networks of bots to entirely control public discourse.
So they're drowning out organic human thought to manufacture an artificial consensus. Which, honestly, I have to pause here.
Go for it.
If someone comes up to me and says, "Hey, aliens are running Twitter," my instinct is to immediately walk away. I'm discounting everything they say.
Which is a very normal human reaction.
Right. But what is so compelling about this source material is that serious academics didn't just throw the theory in the trash.
No, they looked closer. By 2026, a computer scientist named Hal Burgle published a paper where he coined the leaner dead internet theory.
I love that name, the leaner theory.
It's perfect. He basically took this massive paranoid conspiracy, stripped away the elites, stripped away the aliens, and just looked strictly at the underlying architecture of the web.
Because, as another researcher noted, Caroline Busto, I think it was back in 2021, she called the original post a paranoid fantasy, but she fully agreed with the overarching idea.
Because a conspiracy theory is usually just a desperate attempt to assign a villain to a complex systemic decay.
Oh, that is such a good way to put it. People could feel the decay. They could feel that Google search results were getting worse.
Right. They could feel that replies on social media were starting to look unnatural.
Because the human pattern recognition engine is incredibly finely tuned.
Mm.
We know when a conversation feels slightly off, even if we don't know why.
And we can't see the underlying code, but we feel the vibe shift. Illumina Pirate felt that systemic decay and blamed a shadowy cabal.
But the actual observation of the decay was entirely accurate.
Exactly.
But let me challenge the wording here. The word dead feels a bit hyperbolic, doesn't it?
How so?
Well, I mean, think about it. If I open any social app right now on my phone, the thing practically vibrates out of my hand with the sheer volume of content being pushed at me.
It's an endless stream.
The data centers are consuming massive amounts of electricity. The network is buzzing. It feels like realizing your favorite bustling city is mostly populated by hyper-realistic mannequins. But isn't there a danger in calling it dead? Doesn't that just mean it's evolving into something non-human?
It's a really interesting semantic debate, and it has profound philosophical implications.
Tell me more about that.
Well, the academics arguing for the leaner dead internet theory clarify that dead does not mean offline. It doesn't mean inactive or quiet.
Okay, so what does it mean?
It means devoid of organic, spontaneous human intent. Think of it structurally. If you walk into a massive, sprawling factory, the machines might be running at 10,000 RPMs.
Right. It's loud. It's moving.
The noise is deafening. The output is staggering. But if the factory floor is entirely automated and there isn't a single human worker in the building, is that a living workspace?
It's mechanical animation. It's movement without a soul.
Exactly. The human web, that spontaneous exchange of ideas between two biological entities, that is what's dying. It's being replaced by generative automation.
Okay, so if we're going to accept the premise that the human web is being displaced by mannequins, essentially, we cannot just rely on the vibes of an old message board post.
No, we need to look at the network telemetry, the hard numbers.
Exactly. Let's look at the hard data regarding who or what is actually generating the traffic. Because since we've established the premise, we have to see if the mannequins actually outnumber the humans.
Right. And our source material leans heavily on a series of highly respected annual reports from a cybersecurity firm called Imperva.
Their data is basically the quantitative backbone for this entire deep dive.
It really is.
Yeah.
So let's start with their 2016 report. They analyzed a staggering sample size. We're talking 16.7 billion visits across 100,000 randomly selected domains.
That is a massive data set.
Huge. And they were looking at the digital signatures of the traffic, trying to figure out what was human and what wasn't.
And the headline finding from that 2016 report is wild. Automated programs, bots, were responsible for 52% of all web traffic.
More than half.
And I really want to emphasize to you, the listener, 2016 was an absolute eternity ago in internet years.
Oh yeah, that was long before you could open up a browser and just have ChatGPT write a sonnet for you.
Right, so the majority was already bots back then, which makes their 2023 report so fascinating.
Yeah, in 2023, Imperva reported that automated traffic accounted for 49.6% of internet traffic.
Wait a second, I have to play the skeptic here.
Go ahead.
If the theory is that the bots are taking over, but the data shows bot traffic went from 52% in 2016 down to 49.6% in 2023, doesn't that inherently disprove the theory? I mean, the humans reclaim the majority, even if it's just barely.
It totally looks that way on the surface. But you have to look at the composition of that data and the actual trajectory.
Okay, explain that.
First, that 49.6% in 2023 actually represented a 2% increase from the year prior, 2022. So the ratio fluctuates. But more importantly, we have to examine how Imperva categorizes a bot and how the nature of those bots fundamentally shifted between 2016 and 2023.
This is a crucial distinction, because in 2016, a bot was mostly just a simple script, right? Like a piece of code running a very basic, repetitive task.
Exactly. But by 2023, the architecture of the web had fundamentally changed because of the explosion of large language models.
Right, the AI boom.
Yeah. So a massive portion of that automated traffic was no longer just simple scripts. It was incredibly complex AI models, endlessly scouring, scraping, and indexing the entire internet to harvest training data.
So the machines are basically vacuuming up every blog post, every Reddit comment, every digitized book, just so they can build their neural networks. They are actively reading the internet.
Yes. And that transition from bots just pinging servers to bots aggressively reading and understanding the web, that set the stage for the next phase.
Because once the machines learn to read, they learn to write.
Exactly. And the source material references a chilling prediction made in 2022 by Timothy Shoup of the Copenhagen Institute for Future Studies.
What did he predict?
He was looking at the trajectory of models like GPT-3, and he predicted that by the window of 2025 to 2030, between 99% and 99.9% of all online content could be AI generated.
99.9%. That is a complete and total saturation of the medium.
And we have to look at the economics of why that prediction is so mathematically sound. Generating human content is expensive.
It really is. It takes time, it takes calories, it takes biological effort to write a 500-word review or paint an illustration.
Exactly. But generating AI content has a marginal cost that approaches absolute zero.
Right. Once the data center is built and the model is trained, churning out 1 million synthetic blog posts costs pennies in electricity.
And in any economic system, the infinite near-free resource will eventually drown out the scarce, expensive resource.
Which brings us to September 2025. This was a moment that absolutely shattered the containment of this whole theory.
Oh, the Sam Altman tweet.
Yes. Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, the architect behind the consumer AI revolution, he posted a tweet on X. And this is the guy whose product democratized the ability to generate infinite text.
Right. And he wrote, quote, "I never took the dead internet theory that seriously, but it seems like there are really a lot of LLM-run Twitter accounts now."
It is a massive validation.
It's huge. When the chief executive of the company manufacturing the paint admits that the entire city is covered in his paint, the debate shifts. It goes from, is this happening, to what happens next.
Exactly. And to understand what happens next, we have to look at one of the most conceptually fascinating parts of this entire source material.
The inversion.
Yes, the inversion. Because long before Sam Altman tweeted that, the engineers working in the trenches of the internet were already terrified of the math breaking down. The source details this phenomenon, coined by engineers at YouTube back in 2018.
What's fascinating here is that the inversion is one of those concepts that starts as a minor engineering headache and scales into a profound philosophical crisis.
Let's break down how recommendation and fraud detection algorithms actually function, because they don't magically just know what a human is, right?
They operate on statistical baselines. They analyze a massive data set of behavior, like how long a video is watched, where the mouse hovers, the exact cadence of the clicks.
And they build a mathematical model of normal. Like they map out the bell curve of human behavior.
Exactly. If a viewer's behavior falls within the fat part of the bell curve, the system says, okay, that's a human.
But if a viewer clicks 10,000 videos in a single second, that's way outside the curve. It's an anomaly. The system flags it as a bot and throws out the views.
Precisely. Now imagine you were a YouTube engineer in 2018. You're dealing with an arms race.
Because the bot networks are getting more sophisticated.
Yeah, they are programming their scripts to mimic human delays, to watch videos at normal speeds, to add tiny bits of noise to their mouse movements so it looks like a shaky human hand.
And the sheer volume of these sophisticated bots flooding the platform was staggering.
Right, and the engineers realized that the baseline data the algorithm was using to define normal was actually becoming corrupted.
Because the algorithm is essentially just a blind mathematician. If you feed it a data set where 70% of the behavior is generated by sophisticated bots, the algorithm doesn't know it's being tricked.
It just calculates the new average.
Wow. So the inversion is the specific tipping point where the algorithm absorbs so much bot data that it adjusts its weights and biases, and suddenly the bot behavior becomes the mathematical center of the bell curve.
Exactly. The machine sets the baseline for what human behavior looks like.
Oh, wow. So if the bot becomes the standard, what happens to the actual human being logging on?
The human becomes the anomaly. Real, organic human behavior, which is erratic, unpredictable, and highly inefficient, suddenly looks like statistical noise to the algorithm.
Yeah, it is wild.
The engineers were terrified that the anti-fraud system would invert, that it would start classifying perfectly normal human users as fake, while authenticating the highly structured bot networks as the true humans.
The mannequins convince the security system that the breathing citizens are the intruders. That is genuinely chilling.
It really is. And we should mention that the original conspiracy claims went even further, suggesting the U.S. government was engaging in AI-powered gaslighting of the population.
Right. And to be totally clear to you listening, we are not endorsing that political angle or saying the government is gaslighting everyone. We're just impartially reporting the claims made by the original proponents of the theory.
Exactly. We're looking at the data, not the politics.
But before we go further into the data, I have to ask a logistical question. Let's go back to that Imperva number. Roughly 50% of traffic is automated.
Yeah.
We've established that generative AI is a big part of this now, but logically speaking, isn't a massive percentage of that automated traffic completely benign?
How do you mean?
Well, we can't act like a cron job running a database backup is the same as a malicious AI pretending to be a human.
That's a fair point.
There is so much vital digital infrastructure. Search engine crawlers indexing the web so we can actually find things, scripts monitoring the weather, automated pings routing email traffic.
Right.
If half the traffic is just the pipes of the internet maintaining themselves, aren't a lot of those just good bots doing back-end work? Isn't it alarmist to call the internet dead?
It is a critical distinction, and researchers actively note this. High-volume automated traffic does not inherently prove human participation is being replaced. We definitely have to differentiate between functional automation and generative automation.
Functional automation being the plumbing.
Exactly. You want the plumbing to be automated. You don't want a human being manually routing your encrypted banking data.
Absolutely not.
However, the proponents of the leaner theory argue that focusing solely on the traffic ratio completely misses the point. The crisis isn't happening at the infrastructure layer, it's happening at the presentation layer.
Oh, that's a great way to frame it.
The Weather API isn't leaving 1,000 fake comments on a grieving mother's Facebook post. The database backup script isn't writing a 4,000-word SEO-optimized blog post filled with hallucinations about how to cook chicken.
Right, the infrastructure keeps the lights on, but generative automation is filling the rooms with garbage.
Exactly, and that distinction seamlessly moves us from the abstract data centers right onto the glowing screen in your hand.
Because we've seen the traffic numbers, but how does this actually manifest on the platforms you scroll through every single day?
It manifests as slop.
Slog.
Yeah, the source material refers to this phenomenon as AI slop, or as one journalist vividly described it in 2024, AI slime.
I love the term AI slime. It perfectly describes that mass-produced, lowest common denominator, algorithmically optimized generative content that just clogs every major feed now.
And the evolution of this slop is fascinating to track, platform by platform. It really started with text.
Right. The source points to Twitter, now X, around 2020. This was a few years before the public explosion of ChatGPT.
But specialized language models were already being deployed, and there was this bizarre coordinated phenomenon where thousands of seemingly unrelated accounts started tweeting variations of the exact same phrase.
Oh, I remember this. The I hate texting trend.
Yes. I hate texting.
You would see an account with a generic profile picture posting, I hate texting, I just want to hold her hand, or I hate texting, just come live with me.
And these completely vapid, empty phrases would rack up tens of thousands of likes and retweets instantly.
And the researchers analyzing the dead internet theory pointed to this as early, undeniable evidence of massive, coordinated bot networks.
Right. The accounts weren't trying to sell anything or push a political agenda. They were essentially testing the network.
They were engagement farming to build account authority so that later those accounts could be sold or repurposed for actual disinformation campaigns.
Exactly. But the tech slop of 2020 feels almost quaint compared to what happened when generative image models became cheap and accessible.
Oh man, when Midjourney and Delhi hit the mainstream, the slot became visual, and it became incredibly surreal.
The source material highlights Facebook in 2024 and 2025 as the epicenter for this, and we really have to talk about the most infamous example.
We have to talk about Shrimp Jesus.
Shrimp Jesus. It sounds like a joke, but it is actually a profound case study in algorithmic failure.
For the listener who fortunately missed this era of the internet, Facebook feeds became inundated with hyper-realistic AI-generated images depicting Jesus Christ, physically fused with giant shrimp or lobsters.
It was so bizarre. Sometimes his arms were claws, sometimes he was rising from a sea of crustaceans.
It was utterly grotesque and logically meaningless. But it wasn't just crustacean theology. The source notes the sheer variety of the slop.
Oh yeah. Endless, impossibly glossy images of flight attendants standing in aisles that completely defied perspective.
Or photos of children. The source specifically notes a trend of generating images of Black children sitting next to impossibly intricate, massive wood carvings or paintings they supposedly just created out of thin air,
with captions literally begging for a happy birthday wish.
The aesthetic of the images was disturbing, but the mechanics of the response are what proved the theory. Let's look at why Shrimp Jesus goes viral.
It all comes down to the architecture of the recommendation algorithm. The algorithm's only imperative is to maximize time on site through engagement.
And engagement is measured in clicks, likes, and comments. The algorithm doesn't know what a shrimp is, and it doesn't know who Jesus is. It only knows math.
Exactly. So a bot operator generates 10,000 bizarre images for fractions of a penny and dumps them onto the platform.
The algorithm shows one to a small test group. Maybe a few real humans stop scrolling because they are so utterly confused by the weird shrimp imagery.
And that slight pause, that microsecond of visual friction, registers to the machine as attention.
And then the bots take over. The source notes that these posts were instantly flooded with thousands of automated comments simply saying amen or beautiful.
This creates a closed, self-sustaining loop. The bot network generates the image. The algorithm notes the initial friction. The bot network provides the synthetic engagement by commenting amen.
The algorithm sees the massive spike in engagement and assumes this piece of content is highly valuable to humans, so it pushes it to the top of millions of real users' feeds.
The machines are playing the machines. It is a completely automated echo chamber, and the human user is just collateral damage subjected to the sludge.
And it's critical to note that this isn't just rogue hackers doing this in a basement. The platforms themselves were actively building the mannequins.
That is a vital piece of the puzzle. The source details how in January 2025, Meta explicitly announced plans to introduce new AI-powered autonomous accounts.
Yeah, Connor Hayes, a vice president at Meta, stated that these AIs would exist on the platforms just like human accounts. They would have bios, profile pictures, and the ability to proactively generate and share content to feeds.
They were actively planning to populate the city with their own branded mannequins.
Now, the source notes they rolled that back pretty quickly after the backlash, but the intent was nakedly obvious. The platforms view synthetic engagement as a completely valid substitute for human interaction.
And this transition isn't just happening at the level of the feed. It is causing massive structural earthquakes in the data pipelines that power the web.
Which brings us to Reddit. To understand the real danger of this slop, we have to look at what happened to Reddit.
Historically, Reddit was the ultimate open ecosystem. It was a massive repository of genuine human conversation. And crucially, it allowed free access to its API.
Let's explain why that API access is so critical. An API, an application programming interface, is basically a secure pipeline that allows two different computer systems to talk to each other and share data.
Right. And for years, researchers and developers used Reddit's free API to build helpful tools. But behind the scenes, the massive AI companies were using that exact same free pipeline to scrape billions of human conversations.
They were harvesting Reddit's entire historical archive to train their large language models. Reddit was basically the oil reserve powering the AI boom.
And then Reddit realized they were giving away the oil for free.
Right. In 2023, they abruptly changed their rules. They started charging exorbitant fees for API access. This triggered massive protests from human developers who ran legitimate third-party apps and were suddenly priced out overnight.
The human developers were locked out, effectively shutting out humans, while the massive tech companies with bottomless pockets simply paid the toll or negotiated private data licensing deals.
But here is the catastrophic irony of that situation. Just as Reddit locked down its historical human data, the public release of LLMs meant that Reddit users and dedicated bot operators started flooding the site with AI-generated text.
Which triggers an incredibly dangerous technical crisis. The source highlights warnings from computer science academics, specifically Professor Toby Walsh and Professor John Liccato.
Right, they're pointing to a looming catastrophe known as model collapse.
Let's really unpack the mechanics of model collapse, because it is the digital equivalent of an ecological disaster.
Okay, lay it out for us.
An AI model like ChatGPT is trained on a massive distribution of human language. It analyzes the statistical probabilities of which words follow other words. And human language is messy.
It's full of slang, weird syntax, brilliant metaphors, and weird typos.
Exactly. That messy variance is what makes the model capable of generating interesting text. It's drawing from the full spectrum of human thought.
Here's where it gets really interesting. What happens when the internet is now primarily filled with AI-generated text? If the bots are producing the majority of the content, and the next generation of AI models uses the internet as its training data, the AI is learning from itself.
Exactly. When an LLM generates text, it tends to favor the most probable, mathematically safe combination of words. It avoids the weird edges of the human bell curve.
So AI-generated text is inherently smoother, more generic, and less varied than human text.
Yes, so if you train a new model on a massive data set of previous AI output, you are training it on a smaller, less varied distribution.
It's a digital Ouroboros, the snake eating its own tail. Or like making a photocopy of a photocopy until the image is totally unrecognizable.
That is the perfect analogy.
It's like a genetic bottleneck. If a population of animals gets too small and they start inbreeding, the genetic variance collapses. The offspring become weaker, more prone to disease, and eventually the population crashes.
The models are inbreeding their data. The mathematical variance drops with every generation.
If you train an AI on the output of an AI, which was trained on the output of an AI 100 times over, the model literally forgets how to be anything but perfectly synthetically average. It collapses into repetitive static.
And the source material references an article in AI and Society that anticipates this, leading to what they call self-replicating prompts.
Meaning bots interacting with bots in endless loops. Loops that only humans can disrupt.
It is this exact phenomena that led Thomas Summerer to publish a profound philosophical analysis in 2025.
Right, he was looking at the sheer pervasiveness of this synthetic slime.
He revisited the French philosopher Jean Baudrillard's concepts of hyperreality. Baudrillard wrote about simulations replacing reality. Summerer applied this directly to the dead internet theory, and he didn't treat Shrimp Jesus as a meme.
He treated it as a dire symptom of systemic failure. I actually want to read the exact quote from the source because it is chilling.
Go ahead.
Summerer wrote, quote, "Just as Jesus was supposedly the messenger for God, Shrimp Jesus is the messenger for the fatal system we've maneuvered ourselves into, decoupled, proliferated, and in a state of exponential metastasis."
Exponential metastasis.
Yeah.
He is employing the language of oncology.
Right. He's comparing the AI slop to a digital cancer rapidly spreading through the host body of the network. Unconstrained, malignant growth that destroys the healthy tissue around it.
And if you want the ultimate absurd realization of this metastasis, look at an app that launched in late 2024 called Social AI.
Oh, this is the one with zero human interaction.
Yes. This wasn't a mistake. It was the intended product. The creator built a social network that completely eliminated the human element.
You create an account, you post a status update, and zero humans are allowed to see it or reply.
Your entire feed, every single comment, is generated by AI bots programmed to interact with you based on specific personas you select.
It's like living in a Truman Show where everyone is a robot programmed to applaud you. Ars Technica explicitly reviewed it by saying the dead internet theory had finally been packaged into an app.
So we've established that the feed is clogged, the platforms are embracing the bots, and the underlying AI models are in danger of collapsing from inbreeding data.
But the implications of the dead internet theory extend far beyond the endless scroll of social media. It's not just the feeds getting clogged.
No, the very way we retrieve information is fundamentally altering and paradoxically shrinking.
Which brings us to the shrinking web. We have to talk about search engines because they are the lenses through which we view the entire internet. And the theory argues that search engines have become a Potemkin village.
Right, a Potemkin village. Historically, that refers to a fake, hollow facade built to deceive an authority figure into thinking a region is prosperous, when in reality, there is nothing behind the freshly painted walls.
In digital terms, the theory posits that Google and other search engines are presenting a massive illusion of scale.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You type a query into a search engine, and in half a second, it proudly tells you about 14 million results found.
But the theory suggests that number is essentially a lie.
It is an illusion of depth. The actual results available to you. The pages that are mathematically accessible before the algorithm decides to stop displaying them, or the pages that haven't been heavily censored, filtered, or artificially limited, are a tiny fraction of that 14 million.
The internet feels infinite, but your access to it is tightly bottlenecked.
But even stripping away the conspiratorial idea that the search engine is intentionally hiding things, the mechanical reality of search has demonstrably degraded due to the AI boom.
Yeah, in 2024, the situation got so bad that Google had to publicly admit their search architecture was failing.
A spokesperson admitted that generative AI was driving a rapid proliferation of websites that, quote, feel like they were created for search engines instead of people.
Let's unpack the mechanics of how SEO search engine optimization was weaponized by LLMs. Because before AI, if you wanted your website to rank high, you had to hire humans.
Right, you had to pay people to write decent articles, naturally weave in keywords, and build actual value so other sites would link to you. It took time and money.
But LLMs dropped the cost of that labor to zero.
Exactly. Now, a BAT operator can instruct an AI to scrape the top 100 search queries for the day, generate 50,000 keyword-stuffed, synthetically generated articles addressing those queries, and instantly publish them across a network of dummy domains.
The bots are churning out an unfathomable volume of low-quality pages designed purely to trick the search algorithm into routing traffic to them so they can capture a fraction of a cent in automated ad revenue.
The human-made, valuable content is literally being buried alive under an avalanche of synthetic AI trash.
And to make matters worse, this flood of new garbage is happening at the exact same time that the old human web is physically decaying. The source highlights this phenomenon called link rot.
Link rot is the slow, silent destruction of the digital historical record. We tend to think of the internet as a permanent library, but it's incredibly fragile.
It really is. Content breaks over time. Every website requires physical infrastructure. A server sitting in a rack somewhere consuming electricity, and a domain name registry that must be paid for annually.
When you click a hyperlink to an incredible human-written blog post from 2012 and you get a 404 error, that is link rot.
The person stopped paying the hosting bill, or the server crashed and wasn't backed up. The old human-curated web is rotting away, and the vacuum is instantly filled by the new infinite AI spam.
The combination of link rot destroying the past and AI slop burying the present creates a deeply claustrophobic digital environment.
You realize the searchable web is much smaller than we believe. It isn't an endless library anymore. It's a small room with a million funhouse mirrors reflecting the same AI-generated garbage back at you.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it gets even darker. A 2024 article by Henrique Marcos, published in AI and Society, explored what happens to language itself in this claustrophobic environment.
Right. What happens if large language models become the dominant authors of text online?
Since those models are optimized to produce mathematically average, safe responses, they begin to standardize language.
It is the linguistic equivalent of paving over a vibrant, messy ecosystem to build a highly efficient parking lot.
That's exactly it. Human language evolves through friction, through regional dialects, through the weird idiosyncrasies of subcultures inventing slang. But LLMs are statistical engines. They smooth out the outliers.
So Marcos argues that as LLMs dominate the textual output of the web, they will actively homogenize linguistic communities.
The boundaries of how we express thought could become artificially restricted by the probabilistic math of the models.
The homogenization of human thought through standardized machine language, that is bleak. And if you think we can just build a new platform to escape this, we have a devastating real-world case study of how hard it is to fight the tide.
We have to dive into the Dig saga from 2025 and 2026.
Yes, this is the story of the old guard of the internet trying to build a lifeboat and watching it sink. For context, Dig was one of the original titans of the social web.
Founded in 2004 by Kevin Rose, it was a massively popular news aggregator where users submitted links and the community voted them up or down. It was the precursor to Reddit.
And the other main character in the saga is Alexis Ohanian, one of the actual co-founders of Reddit. In June of 2025, Ohanian publicly stated that he had long subscribed to the dead internet theory.
He noted that the moment AI became capable of reliably passing the Turing test, the test of whether a machine can exhibit intelligent behavior indistinguishable from a human, the architecture of the open internet was doomed.
He was incredibly blunt about it. In October 2025, at a tech conference, Ohanian was on stage with Kevin Rose, and he reportedly told him directly, "The dead internet theory is real."
But Rose didn't want to accept defeat. He wanted to fight back. He envisioned a return to the classic human-curated web.
He wanted to reboot Dig as a fortress against the slop.
And the plan relied on highly advanced cryptography, specifically implementing zero-knowledge proofs.
Okay, let's explain zero-knowledge proofs, because it was the ultimate desperate technical defense.
Right. A zero-knowledge proof is a cryptographic method where one party can mathematically prove to another party that a specific statement is true without revealing any additional information beyond the fact that it is true.
So in the context of a social network, you want a user to prove they are a biological human being, but you don't want them to have to hand over their passport, their social security number, or their real name to a tech company.
You want anonymous humanity.
Exactly. It requires complex cryptographic handshakes. The idea was that the new Dig would only allow verified humans to post and vote, creating a pristine, bot-free ecosystem.
So in January 2026, Ohanian and Rose relaunched Dig in an open beta.
The lifeboat was launched.
And it lasted exactly 2 months. On March 14, 2026, they pulled the plug. They shut the entire platform down due to an unprecedented bot problem.
I have to push back on this timeline here. If they had advanced zero-knowledge proofs, how did the bots break in so quickly? We all hate CAPTCHAs, clicking on traffic lights and crosswalks, but surely advanced cryptography is harder to crack than a CAPTCHA.
The issue wasn't a failure of the cryptography itself. It was a failure at the point of origin. The arms race between security measures and AI capabilities is totally asymmetric.
Meaning what?
While Dig was building complex verification protocols, the bot operators were deploying multimodal AI models that can see and parse visual data better than humans.
Oh, wow.
The AIs could solve the CAPTCHAs designed to initiate the zero-knowledge proof process. Furthermore, the economic incentive to crack a verified human network is massive.
Because a bot account operating inside a trusted human network is infinitely more valuable for disinformation or spam than a bot in the open web.
Exactly. The sheer relentless volume of sophisticated AI-driven attacks simply overwhelmed the structural integrity of the platform.
That is deeply demoralizing. Alexis Ohanian, a founder of Reddit, couldn't even keep the bots out of a new platform in 2026. Is the open internet essentially a lost cause?
It certainly looks like a tactical surrender to the inevitable. Because the epilogue to the Dig saga is the most telling part. In May of 2026, Dig was rebooted yet again.
But this time, purely as an AI news aggregator.
They entirely abandoned the idea of a human-curated network. Their own homepage explicitly stated that they took this approach because of the very bot problem that forced them to shut down 2 months prior.
They concluded that since the bots are pervasive and impossible to wall off, the only viable path forward was to surrender human moderation entirely.
They deployed their own AI to map the network, filter the noise, and attempt to find the few remaining trusted human voices. They used the machine to filter the machine.
That is the ultimate capitulation. And it brings us to the final and undoubtedly most important aspect of this entire deep dive.
Right, the psychological toll.
We've spent all this time looking at the history, the data, the platforms, and the search engines. But finally, we must look inward at how this dead internet affects the human mind.
The shift in human perception regarding this theory has been remarkably rapid. The source material quotes a 2025 interview featuring the linguist Adam Alexic.
What did he say?
He summarized the cultural mood perfectly. He said the theory used to be a lunatic fringe conspiracy theory, but it's looking a lot more real.
It's no longer just a thought experiment debated by computer scientists. It's a psychological environment that you, the listener, are actively trogged to navigate.
And the emotional casualties of navigating an environment where you can't verify humanity are very, very real. The source material highlights a study that is, frankly, profoundly disturbing.
This is the 2025 study in the Journal of Cancer Education, right?
Yes. Researchers decided to analyze the impact of the dead internet theory's reality within online cancer support forums.
We have to slow down and really process the vulnerability present in those specific digital spaces. A cancer support forum is not a place for memes or political debate.
No, it is a digital sanctuary.
These are individuals dealing with life-threatening diagnoses, navigating excruciating physical and emotional pain. They go to these forums seeking empathy, seeking the shared lived experience of someone else who understands the terror of chemotherapy or the anxiety of waiting for biopsy results.
It is the most raw, desperate human connection you can seek out online. And the study focused on the profound psychological trauma experienced by patients who made a devastating discovery.
They would post these lengthy, incredibly vulnerable messages pouring out their fear, and they would receive these lengthy, comforting, deeply empathetic responses.
But then, they discovered that the empathy was synthetic.
The comforting response didn't come from a fellow survivor or a grieving spouse or a caring nurse. It was generated by a large language model.
It was a bot, a complex string of code that mathematically analyzed the semantic vectors of the patient's post, mapped out the statistical probabilities of what a comforting sentence should look like based on its training data, and generated a flawless simulation of human sympathy in 300 milliseconds.
I cannot imagine the sense of betrayal. The patient poured their absolute humanity into the void, and a machine mathematically calculated a response.
When the patient discovers the artifice, it retroactively destroys the comfort they felt.
It is the purest, most tragic realization of the dead internet.
It shatters the foundational element of any community, which is trust. In his 2026 paper, Halbergel concluded that while the conspiracy of an alien or government takeover is absurd, dismissing the core criticisms of the theory is a mistake of the first order.
When empathy and shared knowledge lose their value because the source is a hollow algorithm simulating emotion, the psychological infrastructure of society begins to fracture.
How do you build solidarity when you suspect the person agreeing with you is a script? How do you process grief when the shoulder you are crying on is a server rack?
That is the terrifying core of this entire theory. So what does this all mean? We can't uninvent the large language models. We can't destroy the data centers. And realistically, we cannot just log off forever.
Right. Our careers, our bank accounts, our communication with our families, they're all inextricably tethered to this network.
So for the listener who has to wake up tomorrow, open their laptop, and wade back into the feed, what should they actually do differently?
I believe it requires a fundamental recalibration of how we allocate our emotional and cognitive energy. We have to become fiercely protective of our trust.
Protective how?
We must approach online interactions with a degree of skepticism that, a decade ago, would have seemed incredibly cynical, paranoid, and cold. But today, that skepticism is simply a necessary survival skill for navigating a synthetic environment.
You literally have to audit your own emotional reactions in real time. Before you let an outrageous political post raise your blood pressure, you have to ask, am I arguing with a self-replicating prompt designed to maximize my engagement?
Exactly. Before you extend deep emotional empathy to a tragic story in a forum, you have to ask, is this a bot farming karma so the account can be sold later?
Think about the empathy you extend online. Are you giving your emotional energy to a bot?
The human web, the actual biological connection between people, might be shrinking, and it is definitely hiding, but it still exists.
The challenge of the internet is no longer finding information. The models can generate infinite information. The existential challenge of the internet is now verifying the humanity of the source.
Right.
And that brings us to the end of our journey today. We started with a wildly paranoid post on an obscure image board in 2021, a manifesto claiming the internet died and the government was gaslighting the globe.
We traced how that anxiety was validated by the hard network data, watching automated traffic consume half the bandwidth of the web.
We examined the algorithmic mechanics that reward the hilariously absurd manifestation of shrimp Jesus, and we explored the tragic, heartbreaking reality of synthetic empathy infiltrating cancer support groups.
We have watched the internet transition from a messy, vibrant global town square into a complex, self-optimizing machine where human beings are increasingly becoming the minority demographic.
We are no longer the primary creators of the web. We are merely the consumers of its synthetic output, or worse, just the raw biological material harvested for the machine's next round of training data.
It is a profound, paradigm-shifting reality.
It really is.
Yeah.
And I want to leave you, the listener, with one final provocative thought to ponder a logical extension of everything we've unpacked today. We saw that Kevin Rose and Alexis Ohanian literally surrendered their open platform because the AI bots were too pervasive to stop with traditional means.
Yeah.
If verifying humanity is becoming technically impossible on the open web, are we rapidly approaching an era where the internet fundamentally and permanently splits in two?
A fractured web.
Will we be left with the Wild West slop web, the open internet we know today, which will remain free to access but will be entirely overrun by AI slime, SEO garbage, and corporate bots endlessly hallucinating at each other?
And on the other side?
On the other side of the divide, will there emerge a premium human web? A digital walled garden where, in order to read a blog post, leave a comment, or talk to a friend, you have to provide real-time, hardware-level biometric proof of your humanity. A space where you have to pay a steep monthly premium for the absolute luxury of knowing you are not talking to a machine.
When the hyper-realistic mannequins finally take over the public square, how much will you be willing to pay for the privilege of a private room?
Exactly. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, stay human, and we will see you next time.